Greetings, everybody, and welcome once again to this platform, the People's Platform. I am Chairman Capo Daniel of the People's Right Advocative Platform, where we are a principle-driven, non-violent organization that pushes for change and democratic value, especially for the English minority people of Cameroon. So today we're going to dive into something really specific and deep, and I hope that I will later on edit the video so that you can have specific images of the election result that is published by the Constitutional Council. It's important that you have a clear picture, know exactly what happened, what they are saying, and you can see the discrepancy so that you know exactly what happened. This is very important. So we have these two things to do. We know we are expecting a response from Issa Chiruma this Saturday, whether he makes a public statement, takes some kind of action, or he does both. We are waiting a response for Issa Chiruma this Saturday. We have been told to expect something this Saturday. Since Monday, we are waiting for this Saturday. So, and on top of that, there is something very significant we also want to communicate to the general public in this our podcast today, which is something that is happening behind the scene. As we speak, we know that there is direct talk between the team of Issa Chiruma and the head of state of Cameroon, Paul Biya, the CPDM chairman. So there is a representative from Nigeria representing Issa Chiruma, a very highly and respectable personality, has traveled to have a direct conversation with Paul Biya and his CPDM team about the ongoing conflict of the election result. The representative is in the person of Mohamedou and Dimi. Is a very big stakeholder in Nigeria, a very huge person, a very big personality. He is currently in Cameroon having this conversation on behalf of representing Issa Chiruma. So, which means that both sides are talking, and whatever will be the outcome, our public are going to see. We know where both sides stands. We have heard from Issa Chiruma his promise to deliver for the Cameroonian people. He stands to delegitimize and speak the truth to power. So we will be waiting to see how things unfold from here. In the meantime, we also have these documents from the constitutional courts that, thanks to our lawyers on the ground, they have made them available to us. It is now public, so we want to dive deep into it and break down so that everyone should know what the decision was and how the numbers are and how the numbers were possibly manipulated, so that we can use that to compare with the information that are out there in public sources to see what really happened. Our goal here is to give the public a clear picture of what actually happened with the numbers, because we believe if we can't diagnose the problem, we can't even be in a position to talk about it, let alone be authoritative or expect people to really stand on our words. And we are the most credible platform, and we'll continue to act as that, and we'll continue to want to work with other platforms. So we can't solve every problem without really knowing what happened. We must know what happened, articulate what happened to our people, so that they can speak from a part of authority. Knowledge is power. So you will see in the screen now a graph. This is a graph of the official data. This graph comes from the Constitutional Council. It was released by them. It has been published by them. Lawyers have access to this particular graph. And I want to break down the numbers for Cameroonians to see exactly what happened. Because if you do not diagnose the problem, like I said, you cannot be in an authoritative position to talk about it, or let alone assert yourself in the debate, especially when we see the manipulation of the regime going on, mispresentation, intimidation, and the use of law to try to make law and order. It's good that our people know the facts. So it is not just important to say that the election was stolen. You don't just say election was stolen, but we must demonstrate why we believe the election was stolen. Our speech, our discussion on public should not just be based on our imagination and opinion, but we have to verify facts and make sure we have these things. So in this graph, as you can see, due to the lack of time by the Constitutional Council for a short period of time to consider the election of the whole Cameroon. So what they did is that they make a summary of the result. They had a commission, the final counting commission, that helped them to make a final a summary of the result so that they can easily determine who win. So the figure that you see published by the Constitutional Council is only divisions that the voters' margin between Paul Biya and Issa Chiruma exceeded 30,000. That means they summarize, they agree in that committee, including the representative of Issa Chiruma, for simplicity, that they will summarize the votes and they will consider only the areas where the vote difference between Paul Biya and Issa Chiruma, only two candidates were considered, is bigger than 30,000 votes. So in the whole election in Cameroon, all the divisions, only 21 divisions votes where the margins were 30,000 over were considered to determine who win the election by the Constitutional Court. And all of these 21 divisions are now represented in this graph, which they have released, which you can see. So you can look at the graph. In this graph, the 21 divisions are there. And the margin gaps, you can see the margin gaps in those 21 divisions that are within the 11 provinces in Cameroon. The long line, the vertical line, shows the voter percentage, that how many percentage of people voted. Is it 10% people vote? Is it 20%? Is it 30%? Is it 50, 60, up to 80, up to 100? So the red dot shows Paul Biya's win, where Paul Biya's win Issa Chiruma according to the numbers, while the blue dot shows Issa Chiruma's win. So the size of the dot shows you how big the differences was. So if Issa Chiruma win by so much margin more than Paul Biya, the dot is become big, it's represented as very big in this graph to make it very simple. The national average that was reported in terms of participation by observers, the United Nations and European Union, and also based by every other NGO and the political parties, stands at 58% participation. That means all political parties say that national participation was 58% participation. That is not the figure of the Constitutional Council anyway. So in this graph, Issa Chiruma won, if you can look at the graph very well, he won on all areas where the records numbers were within the national average. That means everywhere that the votes were within what everybody expected that people voted, Issa Chiruma won. But the victory of Issa Chiruma was basically, in terms of number, wiped out by Paul Biya in areas where participation somehow was above national average, which is strange, given that those areas that they say that Paul Biya won were all opposition stronghold. So if you look at the areas where Issa Chiruma won, he won in every area. From 50% to 80%, he won in all those areas. But somehow, because the areas with higher percentage of vote means that there are so many people who voted in that area, which you think is the numbers are unrealistic. And you can clearly see that it is eye-raising. For example, the case of Mezam in Northwest, that is in Bamenda. Despite Mezam being the heartbeat of the conflict in the Anglophone zone, with long record of hostility against Paul Biya, being the capital of the SDF of John Fundi, with hostility against Paul Biya, with the lowest participation of CPDM was not able to campaign in this area for many, many years, reported exceptional and massive margin win for Paul Biya. It is unbelievable because I am from Bamenda. We know that most polling stations in Bamenda were not open. So opposition did not even have representative there. They have to count only on Elekam. So Elekam just give them numbers in areas where they said that votes were open, but nobody was there. So Bamenda, historically a stronghold of the opposition sentiment, the official turnout was put that 94% of people voted in Bamenda. So who in Bamenda can believe that over 94% of people vote? In your quarter, how many people vote that you know of? So it's extraordinarily high compared to the national average of 60 to 50% of people voted. So how can there be so much vote in areas where there was lockdown, where there were no polling stations? Somehow it was very high. It's implausible, given that there was a threat going on. Ambazonian fighters were threatening people. Mark Barata and others people were threatening people in Bamenda. It's impossible to have that amount of turnout. So it's clearly not realistic. This suggests that the numbers were artificially boosted. If you also look at the case of Bafusam, where a similar situation happened, because Maurice Kamto did not run, there was dampening enthusiasm, and many of his voters chose to boycott. So in Bafusam, they showed that turnout was instead high, 89%. So basically, they just fuel in the name of people who did not vote and put them for Pobia. So Bafusam historically is a region also that had strong opposition present. They have always voted for the opposition. The Bamileke are known as being the opposition. It is reflected by their opinion on media and even their representation in Cameroon. Everybody know that. So a sudden surge in turnout where people did not vote, somehow that they make sure that everybody voted in that area, is a red flag, indicating that the vote in Bafusam was also inflated. Then now you go to Douala as well, where you have a significant dampened spirit in terms of voting because of lack of Maurice Kamto, but people still voted. But somehow, in those areas where we know that Maurice Kamto's voters were having low turnout, they put the turnout in Douala that 95% of people voted in Douala. This area, we know, citizens have expressed a lot of dissatisfaction and there were a lot of protests against the regime. You had the highest amount of people turn out on the street for Issa Chiruma with big welcome. And the universal turnout simply does not match the reality. So you can't say that people turn out in Douala when 95% of people went to vote. We know that that was not the case. There was massive boycott by Maurice Kamto voter because he didn't motivate them. He just said vote for any person you want. Then in the far north region in Cameroon also, in Marwa, even in the far north region, a region where you have the issue of Boko Haram, in significant places where there were only Elekam people. These are areas where there was many areas where only Elekam people, they were not representative of the CPDM or the FSNC. The turnout there is put by the Constitutional Council at 96% of people voted there. So this is another clear indication that the numbers were adjusted in favor of the incumbent, Pobia. It is not realistic. This area, if you judge by social media publication showing people in that area, you see that they have dissatisfaction against the regime, and there's no probability that the turnout was that high, let alone being in favor of Pobia. So by examining these regions one by one, we see a pattern. Wherever the opposition was strong, the official turnout were suspiciously high because those areas had lower participation, especially in conflict areas. So the regime basically took advantage of conflict areas and areas of electoral boycott to inflate the names of those who did not went to the poll and cast their vote for themselves. That is what we speculate. So this was done to create the illusion that the incumbent, Pobia, had overwhelming support in areas where every Cameroonian knows that he did not have support. So they stole election from places that Pobia could not win. And those areas where they were really challenged and they just allow it. So we see that the opposition candidate, Issa Chiruma, actually won the majority of votes in Cameroon, judging by the figures even published by the Constitutional Council. Because if you look at you just take the national average that is acceptable by all the opposition and the international observers, which is 58%. So if you go to the vote where they put 95% or above, and you reduce it using statistics and put it to 58%, Issa Chiruma will win. So if you drop, what I mean is if you drop this ultra turnout divisions where they put the average above 90% of participation and reduce it to 60% participation, only 7 points will separate the two candidates in favor of Issa Chiruma. So Issa Chiruma is going to win by 7 points. Pobia will no longer win. So that is where he won. That is how Pobia, the election, we believe, was rigged. Issa Chiruma won 70% of the vote. Pobia about 30% of the vote. According to our own calculation, that is the reality we believe is the result of the elections in Cameroon. So Issa Chiruma indeed won. You can judge from the numbers of the Constitutional Council that it is not realistic numbers. It has been inflated, and it is an impossibility for Paul Biya to have won where they say he won. So according to our analysis, Paul Biya couldn't have won this election, and yet he has been declared the winner by the Constitutional Council to be given a mandate of 7 years, which we know he can't manage it, he can't lead. It is intended for his son, Frank Biya, who has been the main person in his campaign. He's the main person behind Ferdinand Gongo and the rest. But we know how Cameroonians have been living in fear. Francophones are afraid of calling his name or Biya, so they will talk about Ngongo. And they will blame Paul Biya that he's an old man who cannot reason. But we all know that Paul Biya was strong. You saw him making a speech for over 30 minutes, standing up for more than 2 hours, greeting people. He could have avoided that. He didn't. So Francophones should stop deceiving themselves and making these excuses about Paul Biya and face him. I've told them and warned them about stigmatizing Ngongo. When we stigmatize people, we only make Paul Biya stronger, because he knows that those people will not be able to give help to the opposition or pass information that are critical. And those people are going to be more loyal to him. So this is our presentation to show you today that Issa Chiruma won the election hands down. 70% of the vote was for Issa Chiruma, 30% for Paul Biya. And Issa Chiruma, according to us in PRAP, was the legitimate winner of the elections in Cameroon based on this information I've provided to you. Have a wonderful day. God bless you all.